G'day. In today's spa business model moment, we're going to take a look at the idea of a management company operating the hotel spa, or a third party as we sometimes say. G'day. Having a management company operate the spa is probably one of the more common structures when it comes to hotel spa operations. And part of the reason for that is that it's a familiar model for hotel companies, because it's very much the same way that most hotel management companies work, whereby a third party comes in and manages the assets and the operations on behalf of another party. Now, the biggest conversation when it comes to management companies is the revenue structure. There's two basic ways to go about it. It's either a straight revenue share model, where the hotel takes a percentage of the top line revenue, the gross revenue, and then the spa operator basically absorbs all of the costs into the operation and they keep whatever profit is left. The other way to look at it is what we call a GOR-GOP share, gross operating revenue, gross profit share. And the way that works is that both parties are essentially taking a piece of the top line revenue and the bottom line revenue. So in theory, both parties are vested in the overall operational and financial success of the business. Now, regardless of which financial model you talk about, there's lots of big conversations to have. In theory, the straight revenue share model is probably the simplest, because really all of the operational costs are the responsibility of the spa operator, end of story. But as I've spoken about before, sometimes absorbing all of those operational costs means the spa is not going to make money, and so it's in the best interest of the hotel to maybe subsidize some of those expenses, like maybe utilities or staff meals, those kind of things. But when it comes to a revenue profit share model, this is where the conversations can get quite heated, because you need to be very clear in the management agreement who has the ultimate responsibility on deciding what gets allocated to the spa P&L. For example, if you were looking at something like marketing expenses, the hotel might want to go out and spend a whole bunch of money on promoting the spa because they've got money to do so. But if that cost gets allocated into the spa P&L, then the spa is not going to make money. The spa operator would never actually agree to those costs if they were running the spa themselves. But, I think there's a conversation that has to happen with the management company and with the hotel company to decide who's got the ultimate authority in that. The other big conversation is always around the expense allocations for things like complimentary treatments. Hotels love to use the spa for service recovery, as we've talked about before. But that comes at a cost to the spa operator. So it can't just be a straight up free treatment whenever you need it. You've got the other conversations around when you've got fam trips, when you've got travel agents or publicity people, newspapers, magazine, media people coming in. Generally the hotels like to give those people free accommodation and free services in the hotel. Well, again, the spa has got a cost to absorb there. So it needs to be agreed between the two parties before you get into it. Who's going to absorb those costs? Probably one of the biggest conversations lately that's happening is the idea of who has, who has the data. If the hotel guest comes down to use the spa, how much access to that guest information does the spa operator get? Remember, the spa operator is an outside party, essentially. And obviously, privacy is a much bigger issue these days than it once was. But even if it wasn't, the hotels don't necessarily want to give up their guest database to the spa operator, especially if the spa operator has only got maybe a 3 or 4 or 5 year contract, because then they're going to leave in a couple of years and potentially operate down the road and take the hotel guests from them. Having said that, from the spa operator's side, it's hard for them to form relationships with the customers if they're not getting access to the data. So it is a conversation that needs to be had. There are laws to consider in certain countries as to whether you even can or cannot do it. But you've also got to think about the guest experience, because the guest wants to feel like the hotel and the spa are one. And if you're not sharing information between each other, then it gets very hard to ensure that that happens. Probably the final point that I'd make when it comes to a management company operating the spa is to remember that money is power. And what I mean by that, if you're operating a spa in a hotel and the guests are charging to their guest room account, which of course the vast majority of them want to do, then you as the spa operator are now relying on the hotel to send you that revenue, because the guest is paying the hotel, The hotel then gets the money, and then the hotel will pass on that money to the spa operator. So cash flow becomes a consideration because there's going to be a time lag between when the guest checks out and when the end of month happens and when the spa operator actually gets their cash. But also when it comes to disputes, he who controls the money really controls the decision in many ways. And we've been in situations in the past as a spa operator where we've had a disagreement on certain charges or allocations of costs, but the hotel operator has refused to pay us the money until such time as that gets resolved. And so invariably as a third party, you just have to cop it on the chin because you desperately kind of need that money. So there are a number of conversations to have. It can be a tricky conversation to have. It's really important to set all this stuff out very clearly in the management agreement before you get started. And if anything comes up along the way, make sure you discuss all of the options and all the alternatives. And I think overall, the biggest benefit for the hotel is that it's a headache they don't have to worry about. And if they get a good quality operator in there, they've got a good quality, consistent operation. The downside for the hotel, of course, is that they have to give up a sizable chunk of revenue. And in theory, they have to give up a fair amount of control as well. So there's no one right model for anyone. It's horses for courses. But if you're going to go with a third-party operator, there's some of the things to think about. Let me know what you think about using a management company for running the spa in a hotel. Good idea, bad idea, troubles you've had in the past. And I thank you for tuning in, and I will be back again tomorrow. See ya.